Hi, my name is Ryan Yolis. I am a registered clinical counselor, disability activist, and board member of Every Canadian Counts from Victoria, British Columbia. How does a lack of disability supports leads to mental illness? Financial stress of paying for disability and health-related supports not covered by the Canadian government contributes to people developing mental illnesses. Disability poverty leads to helplessness, despair, worsening mental health, and anxiety about food and housing security. This puts people at significantly higher risk of developing serious mental illness like anxiety and depressive disorders. Making difficult decisions between having food or receiving supports not covered by the Canadian government, such as counseling, massage therapy, medical supplies, and some medications, etc. Significant reduced access to mental health care due to physical and financial barriers leads to unmet mental health, which escalates mental health deterioration. Persons with disabilities are at increased risk of experiencing discrimination, medical and medical trauma, creates further barriers to receiving supports and mental health treatments. To make things worse, many mental health professionals refuse to help people with disabilities with their mental health due to discrimination. For example, a clinical counselor refuses to see a disabled client by stating, I do not specialize in disability, which surprisingly frequently occurs across Canada. How will persons with disabilities be affected when mental illness qualifies for medical assistance in dying in March 2027? If MAID becomes available to people whose sole health condition is a mental illness in March 2027, gaps in disability and chronic illness supports will push many people towards MAID because of ableism, poverty, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and a lack of access to caregiving and medical and mental health treatments. This will drive a significantly large number of persons with disabilities to experience intolerable life circumstances due to unmet needs or poverty to get a mental illness diagnosis for the sole purpose of granting themselves the ability to kill themselves through MAID. As it stands now, mental illness MAID legislation has a lack of safeguards put in place when mental illness will become eligible for MAID. This will make it extremely easy for persons with disabilities who have unmet human needs, a lack of supports or resources, or who have faced significant discrimination to get a mental health diagnosis to end their lives. In the context of these factors, many persons with disabilities will see death as their most attractive option because Canada has not done its part to ensure them the quality of life they should rightfully be theirs. How does ableism push people into killing themselves with MAID? The Canadian government policies and laws do not value the lives of persons with disabilities and or illnesses by making MAID easy to access but difficult to access resources, basic human needs for persons with disabilities and illnesses to live. Canadian law focuses on access to MAID rather than providing adequate support, resources, and medical care to persons with disabilities and or illnesses. Canada is the only country where people can receive MAID as first-line treatment without first trying other treatments. Canada provides medical assistance in dying instead of medical assistance in living. Practitioners minimize accommodation symptoms physical pain, or mental health concerns of people with disabilities and or illnesses, leading to worse health outcomes. To make things more difficult, they encounter ableism, inaccessible clinics. Too often, practitioners imply people with disabilities are less valuable, too hard to fix, or a nuisance, may view disability as a tragedy or hopeless, reinforcing messages that life with disability is not worth living, which further pushes persons with disabilities to get MAID done. Many persons with disabilities are encouraged by health professionals, family, and friends to get MAID done, even though they had not expressed interest in getting MAID done or seeking it as a medical treatment. There has been documented cases in Canada of nurses and doctors encouraging persons with disabilities or illnesses to get medical assistance in dying. In all documented cases, the nurses and doctors received no disciplinary action. MAID legislation views persons with disabilities with sympathy and pity, and helping people with disabilities to assisted death is viewed as merciful. This is an ableist assumption that reinforces Canada's history of neglect and exclusion, which sees states of disability as inferior. MAID is a rebranding of the Canadian eugenics movement. Canada's society views persons with disabilities as a killable class. What is the solution to all of this? The solution is a national disability insurance plan, which would create equity for persons with disabilities by replacing Canada's fragmented, underfunded, and discriminatory disability support system with a universal, rights-based federal disability government program grounded in fairness, dignity, and full participation. The NDIP would ensure that all Canadians with disabilities would receive fair support, income, healthcare, services, and opportunities they need to thrive and fully participate in Canadian society. The NDIP would massively decrease the need to access MAID as a medical treatment. This would ensure that persons with disabilities would have actual assistance in living instead of only assistance in dying.